Glorious devotees, thank you for viewing this presentation on Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Śrī Madhurya Kadambini, the monsoon clouds of sweetness. We continue in this presentation discussing the stage of Prema-bhakti. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, to pacify his devotee, Bhagavan says, "My dear devotee, I am fully subservient to you. I am your property. Don't be anxious. Let your experience of me fulfill your desire." In this way, Bhagavan manifests his third sweetness, the mellifluousness of his voice, sauswarya, to the ears of the devotee. By hearing that sweet voice as before, the devotee's other senses become like ears, and the devotee faints for a third time. Then Bhagavan, full of compassion, bestows the experience of his fourth sweetness, the tender touch, sukumdriya, of his lotus feet, hands, or chest. Bhagavan awards the touch of his feet to the head of those devotees who are in the mood of servitude. He takes the hands of the devotees who are in a fraternal love in his own lotus-like hands. He wipes away with his hands the tears of his devotees, imbued with parental affection, and he embraces with his two arms those devotees imbued with amorous love, touching their chest to his, which is marked with Srivatsa. In this way, it should be understood that Bhagavan manifests his tender touch according to the bhava of the devotee. The devotee then loses consciousness for a fourth time. Some commentary in this regard. In order to taste the exquisite sweetness of Bhagavan's bodily fragrance, his charming, melodious flute, his tenderness, and so on, all the senses of a devotee gather in one place. To taste the sweetness of his beautiful form, all of the devotee's senses become like eyes. To hear the sweetness of his melodious voice, all of his senses become like ears. In this way, the senses lose their original functions. Merciful Śrī Bhagavān makes the devotee's life successful by bestowing his complete charming sweetness upon him. Allowing the devotee to relish the type of sweetness conducive to his particular mood, Bhagavan satisfies the devotee's intense longing. Vishwanath continues, after this, as the Prema-bhakta begins to fall into a fourth deep swoon, Śrī Bhagavān manifests his fifth Madhurya, namely the sweet taste of his lips, which the devotee savors. He reveals the confidential aspect of this charming sweetness to those in the mood of a female sweetheart. He does not reveal it to everyone. To others, he reveals this sweetness appropriately according to their desire. As before, the devotee's experience of losing consciousness in these ecstatic moods reaches such magnificent depths that Bhagavan, unable to revive the devotee by any other means, bestows his sixth Madhurya, his magnanimity. His forceful and simultaneous bestowal of the charming sweetness of all the previously mentioned qualities, such as beauty upon the eyes and other senses of the Prema-bhakti, is his quality of magnanimity. At that time, Prem, understanding the indication of Śrī Bhagavān, increases exponentially and causes the devotee's hankering to swell accordingly. In this way, Bhagavan accepts the role of the moon and powerfully agitating the ocean of bliss within the devotee's heart, he manifests hundreds upon hundreds of waves, buffeting and simultaneously overwhelming it. He then beautifully reshapes it. In this way, he personally rules the devotee's mind as its presiding deity, expanding his energy in such a manner that the devotee, now unimpeded by tears, fainting, and so on, begins to simultaneously taste, in the core of his heart, the sweetness of all of Bhagavan's qualities, such as beauty. Here, one may raise the following point. The mind can focus on only one thing at a time. To simultaneously relish Bhagavan's 5 kinds of sweetness requires the mind to be absorbed in 5 different ways. This would not allow it to properly and deeply relish even one attribute of one of the senses. Śrī Bhagavān, however, expands his transcendental, inconceivable, unprecedented, and astonishing potency, thus bestowing upon the devotee the ability to see, hear, and so on through each of his senses simultaneously. By so doing, he increases the intensity and depth of the devotee's relish of the 5 kinds of Madhurya with his 5 senses. There is no hindrance here. In other words, there is no scope for being scorched by the forest fire of reasoning arising from mundane experience, since all such transcendental subject matters are beyond the comprehension of mundane logic and reasoning. As stated in Shastra, one should never attempt to understand inconceivable subject matters through mundane logic. The characteristic of the inconceivable is that it is beyond material nature. Vishwanath continues, the devotee then desires to experience in full all the varieties of Madhurya that exist in Śrī Bhagavān, such as his beauty and fragrance. However, just as the beak of a chataka bird cannot hold all the raindrops that fall from a cloud, the devotee is incapable of receiving limitless amounts of Bhagavan's sweetness. Seeing this, Śrī Bhagavān contemplates, Aho, why do I possess all these sweet attributes if my devotees cannot relish them? Therefore, just to help the devotee relish those attributes in full, he manifests his 7th sweetness, his quality of compassion, karunya. This quality of karunya, compassion, is foremost among all Śrī Bhagavān's potencies. She presides over Śrī Bhagavān's 8 intrinsic potencies, such as Vimala, Utkarsani, and so on, mentioned in the Agama scriptures. These potencies are present as petals on 8 sides of the pericarp of the lotus, in which the karunya potencies is situated in full splendor, like a universal monarch. Commentary in this regard. For meditation on the energy of Bhagavan, the Agamas and other Vedic scriptures explain that Bhagavan's 8 potencies, beginning with the potency of purity, Vimala Shakti, are situated in the petals of an 8-petaled lotus, located in the pericarp of that lotus is his compassion potency. The 8 energies, Vimala, Utkarsani, Jnana, Kriya, Yoga, Pravi, Satya, and Isana, remain situated upon the 8 petals of the lotus. Gracefully resplendent within the whirl of the lotus is the ninth potency called the Anugraha Shakti, or compassion potency, which rules over the other 8 potencies as their presiding goddess. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the Pravi potency is the root cause of Bhagavan's being unlimitedly capable. Vishwanath continues. Bhagavan's potency of compassion, known as Anugraha, his favor, manifests herself through his lotus eyes, sometimes as affection, bhakta, vatsalya, and sometimes as compassion, karunya, to devotees in the moods of servitude, friendship, and parenthood. And to devotees in the mood of a beloved, she manifests as that which attracts Krishna and melts his heart. This Kripa Shakti, mercy potency, which arouses further sportive, playful pastimes, is given appropriate names elsewhere, such as Sneha, Priti, and Madhurya. It is by means of the Kripa Shakti alone that Bhagavan's all-pervasive desire potency, Icha Shakti, beautifully places the sadhus on the platform of rag and elevates even those souls who are supremely self-satisfied to the most astonishing platform. In regards to this statement by Vishwanath, this Anugraha Shakti, the potency that bestows Bhagavan's favor, manifests from the lotus eyes of Śrī Bhagavān. In other words, Bhagavan's Kripa Shakti rains down upon the devotee through his merciful glance. This mercy potency manifests in the devotees in Dasya Ras, Sakya Ras, and Vatsalya Ras as Krishna's affection for them, Bhakti Vatsalya, and sometimes as his compassion, Karunya. And in the devotees in Madhurya Ras, she manifests as the potency to attract Krishna, which melts his heart. Sometimes the manifestation of this Shakti is called Sneha, affection, sometimes Priti, love, and sometimes Madhurya, charming sweetness. Driven by this potency, Bhagavan Sri Hari's desire potency, Icha Shakti, awakens an astonishment of his qualities in the crest jewels of those who are Atmarama, self-satisfied. It causes them to abandon their self-satisfied nature and makes them devotees. Vishwanath continues. This Kripa Shakti causes Śrī Bhagavān's quality of affection for his devotees, Bhakti Vatsalya, to rule as a sovereign emperor over his other intrinsic qualities, such as truthfulness and cleanliness, which are described by Prithvi Devi in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vishwanath continues. The scriptures mention the following 18 faults: illusion, lassitude, tendency to err or be bewildered, harshness, intense lust, greed, restlessness or fickleness, madness or pride, envy, violence, depression or exhaustion, exertion, dishonesty, anger, hankering, apprehension or fear, to completely bewilder others, partiality or contradiction, and the tendency to depend on others. The eternal, conscious, and blissful form of Bhagavan, replete with all opulences, is free from these 18 great faults. Even though these faults are by no means present in Bhagavan, by the entreaty of the Kripa Shakti, sometimes avatars such as Śrī Ramachandra and Śrī Krishna Chandra gracefully manifest them. Actually, by the influence of this Kripa Shakti, these faults are transmuted into virtues and are experienced as such by the devotees. Commentary in this regard. In the previous section, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur listed the 18 faults mentioned in the scriptures that are found in the living entities, which include demigods and demons. These faults can never exist in the transcendental form of Śrī Bhagavān, who is the embodiment of eternity, cognizance, and bliss, Satchitananda. Just as darkness cannot possibly exist within the sun, which is self-luminous, so it is impossible for even an iota of fault to exist in Śrī Bhagavān. Nevertheless, during his incarnation as Sri Rama, we see that he was bewildered in separation from Sita Devi. And these 18 faults, except for excessive lust and harshness, can be seen in the pastimes of Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth. Commentary in this regard. Harshness, ruksa, rasata, is prioritizing attachment to something over a loving relationship. An intense lust, prabala kama, is that lust which leads to distress. Although these two faults do not exist in Bhagavan, 16 faults, as evidenced in Shastra, are visible within him. How, therefore, can it be said that Bhagavan's form is devoid of those faults? The response to this objection is that these apparent serious faults in Sri Krishna, such as illusion, exist solely to nourish the transcendental ecstasy of astonishment in the devotees. They manifest from Bhagavan's inherent nature, which is devoid of any scent of the material energy. In order to exhibit playful pastimes, nourish the devotees, and show his special affection for them, Sri Krishna's pastimes cannot manifest fully without them. If Sri Krishna's charming pastimes are not successfully accomplished, his nature as the Absolute and as the original Supreme Personality of Godhead is impaired. Although faults such as illusion are grave defects in the living entity, they exist in Bhagavan as splendid attributes. When a devotee experiences these astonishing qualities, his heart melts completely. Thank you so much for viewing this presentation on Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti's Sri Madhurya Kadambini. I hope this presentation has deepened your spiritual understanding and nourished your practice. Hare Krishna.